So are IP board games the way to go? Is there an inherent advantage in a title that already has an established lore? That's the question I'm asking in this board game vlog, because I had the chance to play a Masters of the Universe title the other day, and I had a really good time playing it. Now, we had an excellent group. This is a kind of controller one versus many, so one player plays the bad guys, or the good guys in this case, because it has that flexibility, and then the rest of your friends each pick a character and you play various missions. Now, from a rules perspective, if I step back for a skirmish-based game, it played light and fast. You had a couple of decisions to make. You had ways that you could level up and power up and use your characters. And if you got knocked out, you weren't removed from the game. You were just kind of sidelined and then you spawn back. On an interesting side note, what I see with skirmish-based games, and I covered this in my various God Tier vlogs, which I pushed up to the channel here under the God Tier playlist. God Tier is a skirmish-based game. What I'm noticing more and more with skirmish-based games is they're not knocking you completely out as a player or the sides that you control. Skirmish-based games, by the very nature of them being smaller, means if you get knocked out or take some losses, you're effectively eliminated from the game. Well, what fun is that, especially if it's a multiplayer game? But if you have the ability to spawn and come back or heal or redeploy, you're still in the game. Now, there's going to be a little bit of a penalty and some sort of resource management that you have to pay. But it's been interesting to see how that aspect of the skirmish-based game has evolved for the better. Honestly, at this point, would I even play a skirmish-based game where you're completely knocked out? I don't think I would. The rules evolution has continued on. So playing Masters of the Universe and exploring that, the rules were solid. They were good for what they do. The missions, we played 3 missions. They were kind of standard fare. They were good. But what made the game exceptional was the players that I was playing with, my friends. They're familiar with He-Man and that universe. And so we're playing the actual heroes and villains, although one would argue that's a matter of perspective. And in playing the game, we were able to kind of throw some quotes at each other and get in character and get in voice and do a couple of taunts. It made the game a lot more fun. Now, the components didn't change. The rules didn't change. The missions didn't change. It could have been just with generic miniatures in a generic fantasy sci-fi skirmished game. Would we have had as much fun? No. It was because it was Masters of the Universe. And this really got me thinking back to other titles that are established in my collection, like Conan. Spent a lot of time reading Conan, watching Conan, comic books, doing the RPG, and the group that I play that board game with, we know the Conan universe, so we're able to immerse ourselves in it. We're able to throw out various quotes and movie lines from it. It has a power to draw on. I think about X-Wing miniatures. I think about some of the other games that I've experienced that have an established universe outside of a board game. What I mean by that is the traditional board gaming model of create your board game and then build the narrative around it. And the narrative around it is usually within the rule book, a couple little side stories and some pictures and some images. And you can have a really in-depth world with multiple supporting board games. An example of that would be Fantasy Flight Games a number of years back with their Terranoth. Runebound, Battle Lore, various games set in that universe, Descent first, Descent second. You learned about the universe based on the games, but the games were first, universe built up second. I think when you go in with an established IP through the movies, through comic books, through media, and you have something that replicates that, players that sit down potentially already know that and bring that knowledge and bring that expectation to the game. I think it does in some ways make it a lot more fun and make it a lot more interesting. The rules don't change. Nothing else changes. but coming in with that experience. So from your perspective, if we kind of break it down with board games, established IP lore existing outside, and it's like, let's create a board game for this to market some more money, right? Star Wars board game yet again to make more money. Well, there's a value to that. There's a strength to that compared to a board game that just comes in where you might have a great idea for mechanics. You might have a great idea with the lore and the story, but you're building that up from a non-common shared point. Agree or disagree? And now this has me looking at some other titles, just IP-based, that perhaps might be interesting to acquire and interesting to play with the correct group.